Continuing 103. Returning, and on his way to the Temple of the Sun, he was greeted most warmly by the overseer of the house of the entity, and the leader of the prayers pronounced the formula of keeping away of evil spirits from the king. The arrangement of the house of stars was completed. The fillets were put on. He was purified with balsam and holy water. And the flowers were presented to him for the house of the obelisk, Ha Ben. He took the flowers, ascended the stairs, the great window to look upon the sun entity Ra, and the house of the obelisk. Thus the king stood there. The prince was alone. He drew back the bolt and opened the doors, and beheld his father Ra, in the exalted house of the obelisk, and the morning bark of Ra, and the evening bark of Tamu. The doors were shut. The sealing clay was laid. On the king himself impressed his seal. He commanded the priests, I have satisfied myself of the secure closing. None other than of all the kings shall enter any more. As he stood there, they threw themselves prostrate before his majesty, while they spake thus, may Horus, the friend of the city of On, endure and increase and never vanish away. On his return, as he entered the temple of Tamu, the statue of his father, the entity Tamu, the greater, the king of On, was brought in. Then came the king Uasarkin to behold the grace of his majesty. When the earth grew light, at the dawn of the next morning, the king took the road to the harbor, and the foremost of the ships sailed to the harbor of the nome of Athribis. There a tent was pitched for his majesty on the south of the place, Kahani on the east side of the nome of Athribis. And we're looking at Greek names here, of course. When the kings of Upper Egypt and the princes of Lower Egypt, all the grand masters of the holy body of fan bearers, all the grand masters of the holy body of the king's grandsons, had arrived from the west country, and from the east country, and from the islands between, the purpose of beholding the grace of his majesty. The hereditary lord, Pet Esse, laid himself prostrate before his majesty, saying thus, Come to the nome of Athribis, look upon the entity Khent Khethe of the cities, honor the female entity Chui, offer a sacrifice unto her in the temple of bulls, calves, and birds. Enter into my house. I lay open to thee my treasury, with the possessions inherited from thy father. I give thee gold, after the desire of thy heart, green stones, heaped up before thy face, and numerous horses of the noblest breed out of the stalls, the best from the prince's stables. When his majesty had gone to the temple of Har Khethe, a sacrifice was offered of bulls, calves, and birds to his father Har Khethe, the lord of Kem-Ur, or is it Xm-Ur, or Wur, Xm-Ur. I'd have to see the glyphs to know for sure. Athribis is what it's usually known as. Then his majesty went into the house of the hereditary lord, Pet Esse, who made him a present of silver and gold, blue and green stones, a great abundance of every sort, woven stuffs, cloths of byssus in great numbers, beds covered with linens, frankincense, oil, and anointing vials, stallions and mares, of the best of his stable. He took an oath of expurgation before God, in the presence of those kings of Upper Egypt, and of the great princes of the land, Lower Egypt for every one of them. He had hidden away his horses, and had concealed his riches, because they desired that he might die the death of his father. An abhorrence to me is this, that ye desire to crush a servant of the king. Be well assured that the sovereign is on my side. Your talk is an abhorrence to me, that I have hidden from his majesty the whole inheritance of the house of my father, the gold, the golden objects, with precious stones, and all manner of vessels and rings for the hands, the gold neck chains, the breast ornaments, composed of precious stones and talismans for every part of the body, the headbands, the earrings, and all the royal array, all the vessels of gold and jewels for the king's ablutions. All these I here openly present, the stuffs of Lycis and the woven cloths by thousands are of the best from my house. I know now that thou art content with them. Go into the prince's stable, choose according to thy pleasure of all the horses, whichever thou desirest. And his majesty did so. And the kings and the princes said to his majesty, Let us go to our city. We will open our treasuries. We will select whatever thy heart loveth. We will bring to thee the best of our stable, the most excellent of our horses. Then his majesty did so. This is the list of them, namely, King Orsarkin of Bubastis, and Eun Branafer, King Alputh of the city of Thentram, Ta Ain Ta, Prince Ta Yemen Elf, Ox of Mendes, and Ta Apra, his eldest son, a lord and captain of Hemorpolis, Parva, Ankh, Hor, Prince Akha-Nashu, a Sebinyatus of Hepi, Isium, and of Samhud, Diospolis Parva, Prince and General Pa Theneth, the Pa Saptu, and Ap-En An-Buhat, Prince and General Pama of Busiris, Prince and General Nesna Keti of Khois, Prince and General Next Hawa Na Shenu, Apa Gerer, Fagror-e-Opolis, Prince and General of Ta-Ur, Tanis, Prince and General of Bakan, Ostracine, Prath-Hur, the Lord of Latapolis, Pethar Sam Ta'ui, Prince, Hero Bissa, of the city of the entity Sext, the Lady of Sa, and of the city of Sext, the Lady of Hassani, Prince Ta'Ke'au of Kent Nefer, Prince Pa-Bisha of Babylon and Nelopolis, and the Heliopolitan Nome. They brought to him their presents of all good things, of gold, silver, of covered with linen, of frankincense, of anointing vials, of trappings well adapted for the horses, of